All right, choking on the 3D. Ugh. Ever since the Sob Rock tour started, I've had a lot of comments and people messaging me asking me when am I going to break down Mayer's Sob Rock pedalboard. Well, today is that day. Now, I know a lot of you guys have been wondering why I haven't made this video sooner, and it really comes down to wanting to balance keeping you guys informed with the correct information and providing this content to Mayer fans, as well as respecting John's wishes to keep his gear private and kind of keep us in the dark a little bit as to what he is using. It just ended up being my personal decision that I wanted to wait until the Sob Rock tour had concluded in order to go over John's pedalboard. I wanted to wait until the tour was done before I started breaking down his board. That was just my personal decision, at least in what I felt was a good balance of giving you guys the information and the correct information that you guys want, as well as respecting John's privacy and not immediately giving away what's on his board night one sort of deal. Because I've known since the tour started pretty much exactly what's on his board, but I just wanted to give him the time and not blow it up and go over it immediately. So that was just my personal decision and what I felt I wanted to do. So with that out of the way, just letting you guys know that, let's get into the breakdown of Mayer's Sob Rock pedalboard. I'm mainly going to be focusing today on the board that was used for the bulk of the tour, and unlike the 2019 World Tour, the Sob Rock board actually didn't really change that much. There were only a few details that he really swapped in and out and was kind of experimenting with. The bulk board actually stayed the same the entire tour. So the physical pedal board itself is the exact same one John was using during the 2019 World Tour with the risers and the incline. Exact same pedal board that John was using for those of you who care about that sort of thing. The pre-drive section starts off with two tuners. You have a Boss tuner for the acoustics, which is a totally different signal chain than the rest of the electric rig. And then you have a Polytune 3 for the electric rig. Next, we have an exotic XW1 wah pedal. It certainly seems to be John's favorite wah pedal. He's been using it pretty religiously since the 2019 World Tour. He hasn't changed or used a different wah pedal other than the exotic wah, either the limited edition Lake Placid blue one we've seen that's now come out, which he obviously got early, or just the standard white one. He's been using that wah pedal pretty much since the 2019 World Tour. Then we have the Origin Effects slide rig, which really, again, seems like another staple for John in terms of compression. He started using this during the 2019 World Tour as well, and has stuck with it for the Sob Rock pedalboard. After that, of course, no John Mayer pedalboard would be complete without a version 1 Keeley Katana. Next, we're going to move on to the drive section, and honestly, the most commonly asked question in terms of pedals and Mayer's tone is Klon into Tube Screamer or Tube Screamer into Klon? Which one works the best for the John Mayer tone? Which one does John Mayer use? And with the Sob Rock board, he actually did the best of both worlds. He went Tube Screamer, Klon into Tube Screamer. So he had both options readily available. Now, the pedals John used for his best of both worlds approach for the Sob Rock tour were the Ibanez TS10. Of course, no Mayer board is really complete without one. His Klon Centaur, of course. Klon, he's just going to use a Klon Centaur. And then kind of a surprise for the tour was John using the Vemoram TSV 808, which I would have never have expected him to pick up one of these guys. But this was the pedal last in chain for the TS Klon TS kind of little mini section there that we're talking about right now. It was TS10 into Klon Centaur into Vemoram 808. Now, I have to do a little caveat here, and that the bulk of the tones for the Sob Rock tour, from all the footage I've seen, at least I got to do a lot more research and deep diving into that before I really give you guys some detailed videos on this specific subject. But for the most part, all of the drive tones really seemed to have been TS10 into Klon Centaur. Just noting, in case you're all of a sudden going to rush out to buy a Vemoram 808, it's a phenomenal Tube Screamer pedal. But John seemed to still favor the old formula of using a TS10 and the Klon Centaur for the bulk of the drive tones on the tour. Now, to round off the drive section as well as that front row, we have a Function Effects third rail dual overdrive. That was last on that front row and last of the drives. Now, with that being said, we're not fully discussing signal chain here. I don't really have it that sorted out just yet, so that'll be a future video coming. But for the most part, the signal chain is right to left and then front, middle, back row for the most part. Now we're moving on to that middle tier on the pedal board, and it starts off with the Qtron Plus, exact same placement as the 2019 World Tour even. And after the Qtron Plus, we have the delay section, which is also unchanged from the 2019 World Tour, in it being a Providence chrono delay, which is his digital tap tempo delay, very easy to set and on the fly for John in a live context. You have a Mark I Aquapus AP1 version that he uses, of course, for slapback. And then you have the Providence chrono delay for kind of his tape TES Cornish style delay on the pedal board. Now, of course, John using 3 delay pedals leads to another very frequently asked question as to why he just needs these 3 delay pedals. And as I kind of just mentioned, they serve 3 different purposes. John likes to have a digital tap tempo delay because he can set it for different delay times on the fly for different songs. And it's very accurate as well. That chrono delay has a very amazing tap tempo feature with the screen on it. It's a great pedal to use in a live setting. The slapback he uses for very specific things, as well as the Providence delay 80s. That's set a very specific way for very specific songs and parts of different songs. So 3 different delay pedals for 3 different purposes, all kind of sound different as well. You don't get the same delay sound or tone from these 3 pedals at all. I'll make that another more fledged out video in the future, but just kind of wanted to give you guys the quick notes on that right now. Now, to finish off this middle tier here, we have a blacked out pedal that, if I'm being honest, we don't 100% know what it is. We know from footage that when John stepped on the pedal, it gave him that tri-chorus for Shot in the Dark. Based off of the 4 knob layout and the switch in the middle, it really does look like it's a Keeley Electronics pedal, the best guess being the Dynamo Roto, which has a tri-chorus on it. Again, we don't know this for 100% certainty, but it kind of all adds up. A tri-chorus setting on the Dynamo Roto with the knob layout matching perfectly. It seems to be most likely that this is what John was using, but we're not 100% certain, and we might honestly never be. Moving on to that back row, there are some familiar pedals as well as some brand new ones for the Sob Rock Tour. The very first pedal is a Chase Bliss pedal. Just going off of its physical placement on the board and the way the pedal looks, I do believe it is the Warped Vinyl Hi-Fi. This is because John had one of these on his pedal board during the 2019 World Tour, and it's the Chase Bliss pedal that stayed with him the entire tour pretty much. So it seems like this is most likely what he used, although I personally have never seen any footage of him actually using it during the Sob Rock Tour, but just as another chorus that he mainly used in the 2019 World Tour, at least for In Repair. It is worth noting that he did have the Tonal Recall Red Knob mod as well as the Chase Bliss Condor on his pedal boards at different times during the 2019 World Tour, but that said, neither of those pedals really lasted. I mean, the Condor was used for 1 show, and the Red Knob mod, Tonal Recall, was used earlier on in the tour. So the most likely answer is the Warped Vinyl Hi-Fi, although again, it being blacked out, we can't say with 100% certainty unless we get some footage of him using it during this tour. After the Warped Vinyl Hi-Fi, we have the Strymon Flint, another pedal that just no John Mayer pedal board would be complete without. Following the Strymon Flint, we have 2 other reverb pedals, both from New Neighbor. We have the New Neighbor Slate, which John always uses for Love on the Weekend, and then we have the brand new New Neighbor Illumin, which is an incredible reverb pedal. The way you can scroll through presets and have all these different algorithms on it make it super versatile and really handy to use for one reverb pedal that can do a bunch of things on the fly very quickly. John originally only was using the Illumin, but quickly added the Slate back to the pedal board. I think just so that he didn't have to dance around the different reverb settings on the Illumin too much, and he could just activate the Slate for Love on the Weekend and not worry about having to scroll through to find the proper setting for that specific song. After both of those New Neighbor reverbs, we move on to the 29 pedals WAMP, which is how I believe you're supposed to pronounce it, or OAMP, as a lot of other people pronounce it as well, but I believe it's WAMP. He has that pedal, which is actually the very last pedal in the chain. John was also using the 29 pedals Una earlier in 2021, but with the release of the WAMP, he seems to be enjoying that one. And it's probably worth noting he's probably going to stick with using both of these for the foreseeable future, just changing them in and out. The last pedal on that third row and the last pedal we have to go over for the entire board is the Boss CE2. We know this as the chorus for Last Train Home, although it's worth noting that this certainly is not the very last pedal in the chain. I can tell you guys that much. So don't be putting your CE2 last in the chain after reverbs and stuff like that. That's not how the board is wired up at all, but just physically that is where it is placed on the pedal board. And with the Boss CE2, that concludes all of the pedals on John Mayer's Sob Rock pedal board. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there were a few things that changed for a few certain shows and kind of near the end of the tour, but this is the bulk of the pedal board, and majority of these pedals did not change throughout the entire tour. So if you guys are wanting to know what is on it, you can pretty much go with this as the Sob Rock pedal board. If you're wanting to replicate this as well, I'll be making some videos going over more affordable versions of John's Sob Rock pedal board, as well as like a mini version that's kind of the key parts for the Sob Rock tones. I'm going to be making all sorts of that content coming out, and I am going to be replicating John Mayer's Sob Rock pedal board. In the background of a bunch of my videos, I'm sure you guys have seen the process has already started. I dismantled the 2019 World Tour board in favor of building the Sob Rock pedal board. So all of that is going to come, lots of tone tips and demonstrations to the channel. So please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and have been watching and enjoying my content, or if you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment down below as to your thoughts on John's choices for the Sob Rock pedal board, if there were different options that he's used in the past that you prefer over his choices for this tour. It also greatly helps out the algorithm as well, and please leave a like if you enjoyed this breakdown and have been waiting for me to do this for you guys. I do apologize for the delay on this video, but as always, you guys, thank you so much for the support, and we'll see you on the next one.
Anyway, go ahead and click the subscribe button if you like what you see.